Yeah, it's having somebody wrapped around your little finger to the point of where they will bend over backwards and do something that they personally find really degrading, and is also expensive.
What is financial domination?
It sort of depends on who you ask, but it's dominating someone financially. Like, it's either taking direct control of their finances or having them buy you shit.
Like, how much money are we talking, I guess?
Some people only spend like $5 at a time. Some people spend thousands.
What would you say would kind of be the average? Like, if you looked at your average client, okay, they're going to probably be spending this much.
Financial domination is not really like charging, if that makes sense. Um, because the whole gravitas behind it is that you are not charging for a service. Somebody is willingly giving you something, or you are engaging in some sort of like mental domination where like they feel force is the wrong word, but they feel inclined to do something for you.
They're either giving it to you or like you're demanding it.
Everyone has a different style. I'm less of a demanding type dominatrix, and more of a like, you want to do this for me because of XYZ.
So, what's the appeal?
A lot of the people that I play with, it's a rush to do it. I mean, if you've ever gone shopping and spent, a certain amount of money, it's like a rush. A lot of people have a shopping addiction. And for a lot of people, it's really humiliating to give a woman money for something they wouldn't, ordinarily have. Like, I have people who give me money to have fun that they're not having.
Does it go along with other kind of fetishes and kinks, or is this kind of like, no, this is usually they're just going to be into this, or does this kind of come with like a whole bag, so to speak?
Every single person is different, but in my personal experience, it tends to go with other kinks. Um, like humiliation is a really common one. So, and that takes all sorts of different flavors. Like humiliation is just an umbrella. I would put forced buy in that category. Forced being in air quotes.
Yeah, yeah, like forced but not forced, right?
Yeah, like, oh, mistress, force me to do this thing I'm asking you to make me do. Um, and like cuckolding is often in that feminization. Sometimes, quote unquote blackmail.
So is it sexual?
Not directly, no.
So how does this kind of ultimately work to where someone is doing their thing, so to speak?
Well, a lot of BDSM is like that, where it's very indirect, where like you're not necessarily doing something with, like by something, I mean something directly sexual with someone, like in a traditional sense, like a vanilla sense. And by that, I mean like, intercourse, that kind of deal. Like you may be doing something that is completely unrelated and unrecognizable on the surface to someone who's vanilla as sexual at all. You're like, why would you give a woman money and find that hot? I don't understand. Why would you spend more money than is, in your budget? That makes no sense. Um, but I think what finsubs find hot about that is that it wasn't necessarily something they planned on doing. It wasn't necessarily something they quote unquote wanted to do at the beginning. Um, they felt like they had no control over the situation. They felt, quote unquote manipulated into it. And that is the part that they find sexy. And sometimes they feel like lesser than the woman, but they look up to her, if that makes sense. So, and in the end of that act, or like in the end of like, an interaction, which sometimes can go on for like weeks, right? Um, then somewhere in the middle of that, they might.
Do their thing. Let's refer to it as doing their
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Do their thing is good. I like
So
that.
that would be the like where what I kind of don't quite understand is like, okay, so if they're doing their
Mm.
thing, like what are they doing their
Mm.
thing to? The act of like giving you $10 or something like that, like they do it to that, or they're doing it to the idea that they're doing it to you? Like what are they doing their thing to, I guess would be the question.
The
The
whole
whole
concept
thing,
of
the
it.
whole
Like it's the idea they're doing their thing to I like how I'm just like doing
visual
that in
aid,
the
a
corner.
visual aid,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. Someone's gonna do their thing to that later. Um because there are
Yeah.
tons of videos of that, of women just doing this and saying you are gonna give me X amount of money for because I exist and you want to make me happy. And that's a whole genre of porn, just by the by. And that is a thing that people do their thing too. But some of the people that I play with like to be humiliated like that. So to answer your question, what they're doing their thing to, lots of different things.
Lots of different things, but the whole
The,
thing at the same time. Like it's all an
yeah, yeah,
experience that kind of
exactly.
comes along with it.
I think it's being humiliated.
Would you say that kind of financial domination is fundamentally different than other kinds of domination?
Not necessarily. I think it's just more popular because a lot of, more popular for women to try to get into um, because they saw it as like, oh, it's an opportunity for me to just make a social media account, post some hot pictures of myself, and then men will give me money. But it's much more nuanced than that. And I mean, like if you just insult a guy on the internet, and say, give me, money from my Starbucks, like it might happen, but financial domination is not as common a fetish for people to have as people think. The thing that makes it sometimes different is that oftentimes people will go too far with it, and then it will end up being sort of a destructive thing where like they will get themselves in trouble, like spending significantly too much, but that ends up also being a fetish, right? Like towing the line of like, is this actually a life problem for me?
How do you kind of, I guess, be responsible in that sense of like, okay, this person wants to give me $250, but they really can't afford it. Like, how do you kind of make sure that you're not taking real advantage of somebody? Like,
Well, I think in some cases it's impossible to know unless you really know the person. And if you're just having a one off interaction with someone online, it's really difficult to know, right? And that is kind of a matter of personal responsibility, yours and theirs, right? Like if somebody is going around online interacting with any attractive woman and saying like, please mistress, let me give you $200, um he's gonna find someone who's gonna take it, right?
yeah,
So like, and the way that I interact with people, like I try to not be pushy unless like it's a fun interaction. And at the end of the day, if someone is really like no hard stop, like I just don't care. By don't care, I mean like I'm not going to force somebody truly to do something that is bad for them.
can you kind of get a sense if somebody's like, hey man, this might be your last $500 or something like that? Can you kind of get a sense of that?
Not from a one-off interaction, right? Like in some cases certainly yes. But like that's like them face to face, right? Like how can you tell over the internet? Like from like a random Twitter account. There's no way to know.
Where do you kind of like, are most of your clients then, is it a virtual thing or is it in person when you look at the financial domination?
Most financial domination stuff is online. So there's no way to know for sure.
If we were to kind of like look at a normal, or not normal, but in your average kind of client interaction, and if we need to like pretend I'm the client or whatever, like how does this usually go about? They contact you, how does this work?
So some terminology, just basic BDSM terminology. In a scene, The person who's doing the things is usually called the top, and the person who's having the things done to them is usually called the bottom. A bottom is not necessarily a submissive, and the top is not necessarily dominant. In my case, I trend towards dominant in pretty much everything. But anyway, that aside, typically, like when I engage in financial domination scenes, they are like kind of playful. Like I will poke at some like fetish that someone has. Like let's say someone like has a fetish for like cuckolding, right? Um I'll make some joke about like, "Oh, it would be so terrible if like you paid for me to go out on a date with my girlfriend. Like it'd be awful if you did that. Like I can just imagine all the fun things we might do. You'd be enabling us to do that." And depending on how they engage with me, I'll take it in a different route. Like if they engage with that line of thought, then I'll continue with it. And if they're just like, no, that is not what I'm into today, like, then I'll sort of try, nipping away at something else. And I would describe most of the like financial domination scenes as less like planned than most other scenes and more like sexy harassment. Which is, I think, what a lot of people like about them is that it is very unexpected. Kind of like when you get like a hot picture sent to you from someone that you're dating.
It's less kind of a thing that like we're going to do this between like 10 and 11 o'clock, and more kind of a thing like I'm going
Yeah,
to send you a message randomly throughout the day, be like,
pretty
pay for this
much.
coffee or something like that, kind of along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm less like pay for this coffee kind of girl and more like I'm bored. I'm gonna harass you and see if you'll buy my girlfriend a pair of shoes.
And then and then they'll usually like that's the thing then, right? Then they'll go ahead. How long will these kind of, if you were to take like an interaction with somebody from kind of start to beginning of that interaction, are we talking like one message, two message, three message, they're done? Or are we like, do these things go on for a while, or like what's the time frame?
Everyone is different. Sometimes it'll be like instantaneous, like, here you go, mistress, I bought the shoes. Or like sometimes I'll have to chip away at it and it'll be like a couple of days, you know? And like, I don't mean like constant a couple of days. I mean like, I'll send them a message every now and again. But it's usually like not that many by my standards. So, and I suspect that like if I really truly cared, and like was deeply invested in it, if I like did more of the like video call and phone call nature, it would be way less interaction. But I find the messaging back and forth and like sexy harassment thing to be very entertaining.
Do you personally kind of enjoy it from a sexual aspect? Like, is this something that you're into, for lack of a better phrase, or is this like this is something that I do and I'm good at?
I mean, it's both. That's how I view all of the domination stuff is like it is sexy amusement. So I like when people do things for me. And like one thing that I particularly like is when people like quote unquote get more than they ask for. So it falls into that bucket, even if it's like, I don't know, I really just only intended to buy you one coffee and I bought you four.
Oh, but okay, I'm just gonna ask you it. Like, did you ever do your thing to this, to like the interactions that you have?
Um, yeah. I mean, I've done that to like all sorts of different interactions. So,
Would
like things one wouldn't imagine, right? Like just from a vanilla standpoint, you're like, why would you do that? And it's less like for me, it's less about the like, oh, somebody gave me money or bought me a thing because who cares? It's stuff, right? And more about the like, oh, you did that. That's funny.
I don't know what it says, but it says something. Like I can't put my finger on exactly like the terminology of what it says, but like, oh, I get what that kind of implies, right? Like, or I get where that it's you feel powerful.
Yeah, it's having somebody wrapped around your little finger to the point of where they will bend over backwards, and like do something that they personally find really degrading, and is also expensive. So, and that they then afterwards feel like regret for is fun and hot, right? So, and like if they're truly like, I really can't afford this after the fact, I'm like, I don't care, whatever.
Have you ever had somebody ask for their money back?
From financial domination, no. I mean, in general, no. I think the whole thing about the financial domination thing and people getting in over their head is very similar to the thing about submissives who enjoy pain and who like feeling the bruise and the sting and like showing off bruises, right? It's like a reminder of the experience, which is fascinating and not really a thing I understood at the very beginning. Like, if I spend too much, I'm like, that's a mistake. I'm not doing that again. Like, and I feel regretful. I don't feel shame about it. I just feel like an idiot.
Are you ready for some harder slash listener submitted questions?
Sure.
Is this in any way related to sugar dating?
I don't think so. I think that some sugar babies, like to view it as similar. And I've seen in a lot of communities online a lot of discussion of some transition over. But in my opinion, no, because it's not really financial domination if you aren't really dominating somebody.
Has anybody ever asked you to just take complete control of their finances?
Frequently, yes. It's interesting to see what people spend money on.
So when you like go over their taxes and stuff, like what are you doing when you get asked that?
Yeah, spreadsheets of expenses and stuff like that and budgeting, honestly.
So is that now? Is that like a subgenre of it? Is that called something different, or is that no? That just falls under.
That is a subgenre of financial domination, and I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but yeah, that is definitely like an established subgenre. With some people, that is a lot of overhead.
What will you, well, like in that kind of situation? Like, what will you be doing? You manage their finances entirely.
I like to set people up with a plan personally. And usually I like to leave people in those situations where, like, if they do happen to overspend on financial domination, they're not left like destitute. So I've put people in situations where like they actually have like large amounts of savings afterwards that they're not allowed to touch.
And so you'd be like assigning, you can spend this much on this much on that. Like, how does that kind of?
I mean, like, you just help people make a realistic budget, right? And help people plan things out. And, like, it's also not that hard to look at how to consolidate debt, right? Like, if someone has a whole bunch of credit cards, the interest rates on those are astronomical. So you can, I mean, depending on what other options you have, you can consolidate those just directly through. I mean, you could get a home equity line of credit if you own a house, or a different type of loan from your bank. There's a bunch of different options.
Oh, that's what's fascinating to me. It sounds like you're doing like a really good job when you manage their finances.
Well, why would I do a bad job for someone that is serving me? That's stupid.
I guess I just kind of thought along the lines of like, okay, I'm going to tell you what you can spend. I didn't think that you would be like telling them, hey, invest in a 401k or something like that.
Well, I do that too. Like, hey, you should open a savings account at like these places because they have great rates and great returns.
I don't know why I find that so interesting for some reason that like being a good accountant. I thought it would be more just like along the sexual lines of like I'm going to manage your money.
I mean, personally, like someone is of no use to me if they are like destitute, they've, ruined their job, like they have a huge amount of debt and like they can't keep up with payments on anything. That's not useful to me. Like they're way more useful to me if like they've sorted all that shit out and they're free of everything, right? And they have like a large amount of savings if they ever happen to make a freaking mistake. Like, right? Stability is totally priceless.
Ain't that the truth? I think the reason that I had the reaction to it is because one of the first people we interviewed on the podcast was a dominatrix, and she had the best tax advice. And I use her accountant. I'd assumed you can spend $500 on food this month or whatever, not like, hey, you gotta diversify your bonds or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I use either Vanguard or oh God, what is the other one? I use Wealthfront or Fidelity. Fidelity does not charge fees. I don't use the apps because they are like, the apps like Robinhood, because in case anything happens to be unstable, they kind of upset the market, if that makes sense. Like your trades won't necessarily go through. I know a lot of people in finance and a lot of people in tech. So, yeah.
What is your most frequent request?
My most frequent request is mistress, do whatever you want to do. Whatever pleases you is honestly my most frequent request at this point in time. I used to get, like when I was younger, I used to get very hyper specific requests about like, oh, I have this like XYZ fantasy, and like, I don't know, a lot of my requests are like, let's have a good time together, or like, I don't know. Sometimes I get requests of like people wanting to learn something new. So I think it tends to fall into one of those two buckets.
Is there one that you would stands out to you, or like an experience in the financial domination aspect that you would say that was either my most interesting or one that kind of jumps out at me? Like I still remember this interaction with this person.
I'm trying to think back to like 2020 because 2020 was funny. 2020 got real weird, let me tell you. People were really bored in 2020 and 2021 because the market again was like up and people were just like lighting money on fire. So I ended up with a lot of things. Like, I recently discovered that like part of my Amazon wish list, I didn't set the settings right, so I kept getting multiples of everything. So I have like more Halloween costumes than a Spirit Halloween. Like way more. Like one person bought everything that was on there, and then there were multiples of everything else. So like it's insane. I mean, I like have someone who and several people actually who like now have large amounts of savings as a result
Of you kind of taking over their accounts?
Yeah.
How much money have you saved them, do you think? If you had to put a number on it.
Tens of thousands.
It kind of seems like people should just do this from a business standpoint, to be honest with you. Like, this isn't my thing, but I'm starting to be like, do you want to manage my finances? Like, it seems like you're doing a good job. Most amount of money somebody's ever given you at one time?
Ooh. Not sure I want to say that on.
Can you say 3 figures, 4 figures, 5 figures, 6, 7? Can you put a figure on it?
Definitely not 7. I don't think 6 either.
What would you say? Like, what's the most frequent denomination? Are we talking like under 100, over 100? What did people?
Definitely over 100. Like for financial domination, it's usually, like at least for me, over 5.
Are women interested in this?
Yeah, surprisingly. I mean, women are interested in everything, right? Like anything a man is interested in, a woman is interested in too. Like, which that was not a thing I thought originally, and then I have a friend with a very strong foot fetish, uh, which like was kind of eye opening to me when I first interacted with her at a party. But that made me ruminate a bit on, you know, women having kinks.
But do you have clients who are women?
Mm-hmm. I have a lot of clients that are women.
If you had to put a percentage on it, are we talking like 70% men, 30% women, 60-40? What do you think it would be?
I'd say it's probably more like 90-10.
That's still more than I would have thought it would be.
Yeah, but it definitely comes in waves where like I'll go a bit without seeing women and then like my entire schedule is women.
What would you say makes someone a good financial dominatrix?
I mean, I think what makes anyone a good dominatrix actually is having compassion and being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes from a standpoint of like understanding what exactly you are asking of someone and exactly what the kink is, right? So like it's again, it's not as simple as like, oh, he's just going to give me money, and it's not as simple as like, oh, I'm just going to make him wear panties. So there's a bit of complexity to everything.
Um, that's pretty much all the questions that we have. Is there anything that you kind of think that we missed or anything like that? Right, like when somebody talks about like, okay, do they usually want it combined with something else? Like, will you usually say to somebody, you need to send me $250 and then put on women's underwear? Or is it more just kind of confined to like, send me $250 so I can go out to eat or something like that? Like, do you come,
It all
depends on the
depends.
person?
Like, yeah, it all depends. Like, sometimes it's just standalone. But in that instance, it will be standalone, and sometimes you can or do add an element of humiliation into it, right? And that humiliation can be like honestly anything.
Are these people that are doing this, like, are they single? Are they usually in a relationship with somebody else? Like, do you get the sense that these are men with girlfriends, women with girlfriends, etc.?
I think most of the people that I interact with tend to be, at least in like the financial domination situation, um, are single. Um, it does get a little bit weird when they're in relationships, honestly. And some people, some dominatrixes take it in the direction of like, oh, I'm so much hotter than your wife, blah, 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 blah. But like, I also think that's derogatory towards women, and I'm pretty anti anything that's derogatory towards women. So
Yeah, that kind of gets into
that's a no no for me.
that gets into some.
And that's not a no no for me, like, oh my God, how could you ever? But like, I just don't like saying things that are mean towards other women because I think that we should just sort of keep it towards being mean to people who are doing things for us who like it when we're mean to them, not to just everyone. And also, like, why drag somebody into this who did not fucking consent to it? Like,
Yeah.
it's just it's just enabling bad behavior. Yeah, I had somebody ask me once to like encourage him to like jack off into his wife's coffee without like her permission, and I was like, abso-fucking-lutely not.
Um, that's pretty much all the questions that we have. Is like, if people want to learn more about this, if they're interested in being a client, what should they do? That kind of stuff.
My website is rubylovesyou.com. And beware of catfish pretending to be me on basically any website.